Welcome to Secrets of the Bible. You ever wonder why life hit you harder than it hit everybody else? Why the warfare never let up, even when you were just trying to heal? Why every step forward felt like you were dragging chains behind you? It's not because you're cursed. It's not because God forgot you. It's because you are becoming. And hell knows it. Before you ever knew who you were, the enemy saw it. Before you ever understood your assignment, darkness recognized your name. You weren't overlooked, you were marked. That's why the attacks started early. That's why relationships broke you, doors slammed, and people you loved turned cold. It wasn't random. It was targeted. The devil wasn't fighting your past, he was trying to abort your future. Because your becoming terrifies him. He saw what you would become if you ever started praying for real. If you ever forgave for real. If you ever healed and got back up. That kind of woman, she's a problem. That kind of woman carries authority. That kind of woman knows how to war in the spirit, speak with clarity, and walk in rooms with peace that confuses demons. And that's why the fight has been so heavy. Because the enemy couldn't kill your calling, so he tried to convince you it never existed. He wanted you to sit in silence, drown in shame, and die in delay. But here's the part he never expected you survived. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but you're still here. And whether you realize it or not, every battle you walked through, every tear you cried, every time you got back up when nobody saw you, that was you becoming the woman God called, becoming the threat hell hoped you'd never figure out. And now, heaven is waiting. Not for you to be ready, not for you to be perfect, just for you to say yes. Because the moment you do, chains will break. Legacies will shift. And the kingdom of darkness will lose ground it never had permission to claim. So the question is no longer, why is this happening to me? The real question is, what does hell know about me that I haven't discovered yet? But before we begin, I invite you to partner with this message. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." If this word stirs your spirit, help us shine it brighter. Like this video? Leave a comment that says, "I was chosen through the fire." Share this with another daughter who's still doubting. And subscribe to Secrets of the Bible as we move toward 50,000 voices rising together, one remnant, one assignment, one purpose. And that's exactly where we start, because the truth is, what you've been surviving wasn't punishment, it was preparation. See, it isn't just about pain, it's about revelation. It's about pulling back the veil and exposing what was happening behind the scenes when you thought God was silent. You weren't just going through trials, you were being identified in the spirit. You weren't just rejected, you were being set apart. Every delay wasn't denial, it was divine strategy. Because God never launches a woman he hasn't first hidden. And that's what's been happening to you. You've been hidden, misunderstood, shelved, and the world called it failure, but heaven called it covering. Because the oil on your life was never meant to be exposed too early. You were too valuable to be rushed into visibility. The silence was protection. The pain was birthing weight. You weren't forgotten. You were being formed. That's why nothing about your story is ordinary. Because you are not just a woman, you are a weapon. A chosen one. And the enemy didn't fear your struggle. He feared what your struggle would produce. He feared that the woman who once second-guessed her own voice would one day speak with authority. That the girl who was overlooked in rooms would one day carry the room. That the one who cried alone on her bedroom floor would one day stand and break chains off others. He feared your becoming. And that's why the attacks were strategic. They weren't sent to break your heart. They were sent to break your identity. Because if he could convince you that you were just another woman with another sad story, he could stop you from stepping into the calling that was written over your life before you were even born. You want to know how you can tell it was never just life happening to you, but warfare surrounding who you're becoming? Let me show you the signs. Sign number 1. You've always felt different, even when you couldn't explain why. You couldn't blend in no matter how hard you tried. You saw the world differently. You sensed things in people before they showed you. You had a hunger for God even when you were surrounded by compromise. That wasn't a personality quirk, that was spiritual separation. God was setting you apart long before you ever said yes, and the enemy saw that difference too, which is why he tried to label it as brokenness. Sign number 2, you've survived things that should have destroyed you, and not just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You've endured seasons where the weight was too much, and yet somehow you're still standing. That's not by accident. That's evidence. Because when God marks a woman, no devil in hell can take her out before her time. You didn't just survive for survival's sake, you survived because your survival preaches. Sign number 3, you've always had to fight harder than everyone else just to feel peace. Where others seem to glide through life, you had to war for joy. You had to wrestle for clarity. That's because you were born into resistance. The enemy couldn't block your calling, so he tried to bury it under chaos. But what he didn't realize is that all that chaos just sharpened your discernment. All that warfare trained your hands for battle. Sign number 4, people didn't understand you. Even people who said they loved you. You've been misjudged, mislabeled, and misunderstood, and at times it made you question yourself. But let me tell you, God didn't call you to be understood. He called you to be set apart. When you're chosen, your life won't look like theirs. Your obedience won't make sense to them. And your process will always require a level of silence they can't interpret. Sign number 5, you were drawn to the presence of God before you even knew why. Something in you always longed for more. Not religion, not routine, but the presence. And even when you strayed, something always pulled you back. That's because the Spirit of God was never casual about you. You were chosen before you had language for it, and your spirit knew it even when your mind didn't. These aren't coincidences. These are confirmations. Your life has been speaking this truth all along. You are not common. You are called, and the enemy knows it. That's why he's been trying to bury your identity beneath struggle, confusion, delay, and shame. But now the veil is lifting. And here's the truth, the enemy hoped you'd never discover your becoming is a threat to darkness. Not your title, not your perfection, not your platform, your becoming. Every time you choose healing over hiding, every time you set a boundary that protects your peace, every time you obey God when it costs you everything that's warfare, that's disruption to the kingdom of hell. That's territory being reclaimed. And whether you felt it or not, heaven saw it. Heaven recorded it. Heaven backed it. You thought you were just surviving. But the Spirit of God was standing over you saying, "This is my daughter, in whom I am well pleased." You didn't need the applause of people when you had the witness of heaven. You didn't need to be seen by man when you were already marked by God. So now we shift. Now we step into understanding not just what happened to you, but what God was doing in you through every battle, every breaking, every silent season, because you're not just called, you're being commissioned. And this next part of your story? It's not about survival anymore. It's about surrender. And surrender doesn't always look graceful. Becoming isn't pretty. It's not curated. It's not clean. It's messy. It's brutal. It's the part nobody posts about. And if you've been in it, you already know this fight to become the woman God called you to be. It's the hardest battle you've ever faced, because it's not just about what you're leaving behind, it's about what's trying to hold on to you while you walk forward. Let's be real. You didn't just battle circumstances, you battled voices. Voices that told you you're too damaged, too late, too emotional, too much. And maybe, if you're honest, you started to believe them. Because the lies didn't come from strangers. They came from parents, from partners, from pastors, from people who should have spoken life into you, but instead they planted doubt. And that seed grew into silence. into shame, into cycles. You've had to fight thoughts that whispered God changed his mind about you. You've wrestled with silence from heaven and assumed it was rejection when really it was refinement. You've questioned if you were chosen at all because chosen people aren't supposed to feel this broken, right? Wrong. That's the lie. That's the trap. The enemy wants you to believe that the presence of pain means the absence of purpose, but it's the opposite. Your pain proves the purpose. Your wrestle reveals the weight. You don't get resistance unless you're carrying something worth resisting. Here's what most people won't say out loud. Your real battle hasn't just been with people or pain. It's been with perception. The enemy's weapon of choice isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's distortion. He doesn't have to break you if he can blind you. If he can twist the way you see yourself, twist how you hear God, twist what obedience looks like, then he's already done the damage without ever lifting a hand. That's why your struggle felt so personal. Because it was. The enemy targeted your mind. He filled it with just enough confusion to make you question whether it was even God speaking to you. He made you overthink everything. He got you addicted to confirmation, paralyzed by doubt, afraid to move unless 10 people signed off on it first. And every time you hesitated in obedience, he whispered, "See, you're not chosen. You're not ready. You're going to fail." That's not spiritual warfare in theory. That's spiritual manipulation in real time. And it's subtle. That's what makes it so dangerous. Because he didn't come for you with flames, he came with false peace. He said, just stay where it's safe. Don't rock the boat. Don't leave that relationship. Don't speak that word. You'll lose too much. He wrapped comfort around you like a blanket and called it wisdom. But deep down, your spirit was restless. Because the truth was, your safety was suffocating you. And every day you ignored the pull of obedience, a little piece of your discernment dulled. And let's talk about obedience, because that's where it really hits. You didn't just battle fear. You had to obey God when it meant walking away from everything comfortable. When it meant letting go of people you loved. When it meant building something from nothing, trusting a word that didn't make sense, following a whisper while fighting off warfare. And you did it scared. You did it shaking. And maybe you didn't feel strong, but obedience doesn't require strength. It requires surrender. And surrender? That's where real power lives. The truth is, you've been in a spiritual war with your own reflection. The enemy tried to bury your identity beneath guilt, trauma, and delay. He wanted to exhaust you so badly that you'd forfeit the promise just to find peace. But God was watching, not waiting for perfection, but for persistence. Because every yes you gave him in the dark is about to echo in the light. See? Obedience sharpens you. Disobedience drains you. And delayed obedience? That's still disobedience. But the enemy used your struggle to keep you exhausted, confused, double-minded because he knows a tired daughter won't trust what she hears from God. And if she doesn't trust it, she won't obey it. And if she won't obey, she'll never become. And that right there is the assignment. He's not just after your confidence. He's after your clarity. Because he knows what happens when a woman walks in discernment. She stops settling. She stops explaining. She stops attaching herself to people God never sent. She stops waiting for permission to do what God already told her to do. And that kind of woman? She's unstoppable. That's why the warfare has been this deep. That's why your mind has been this loud. Because if you ever start trusting your spiritual instincts again, if you ever start believing that God actually chose you on purpose, hell loses its grip. You don't need a new word. You don't need another confirmation. You need courage. Courage to obey the last thing God told you. Courage to let go. Courage to move. Because clarity comes after obedience, not before. And here's the part, most people never prepare you for obedience will cost you. Not just your comfort. Not just your plans. Sometimes it costs you the people you thought would walk with you forever. Sometimes it costs you your name, your reputation, your seat at the table. Sometimes it costs you connection, community, and certainty. And when that obedience leads you into silence, into isolation, into wilderness, it can feel like abandonment. Like you followed God right into being forgotten. You let go of what He told you to leave, thinking He'd replace it quickly. But instead of reward, you got silence. Instead of breakthrough, you got waiting. And you started asking the question every obedient woman eventually whispers, was it worth it? Because nobody warned you that saying yes to God might make you look crazy. That obedience might get you blocked, unfollowed, misunderstood. That walking in your calling might come with less applause and more loneliness. That obedience doesn't always produce fruit in your timeline, but it's still producing something eternal. See, what you didn't realize was that God was pruning you, not punishing you. He was stripping away everything that couldn't carry the weight of who you're becoming. And that means some relationships had to fall off not because you're hard to love, but because what's on your life demands alignment. And everyone can't go where God is taking you. Everyone can't understand the anointing you carry. Everyone won't celebrate the woman you're becoming. You've been in the refining fire, and fire is never comfortable, but it's holy. God wasn't trying to embarrass you. He was sanctifying you, separating you, teaching you to hear His voice without needing crowd validation, strengthening your discernment so you would stop second-guessing what you know He said. He wasn't being silent to hurt you. He was training your ears to recognize the whisper because that's how He speaks to those He trusts. And yes, it's lonely at first, but that loneliness is sacred. Because that's where you start to realize you don't need a crowd when you're carrying kingdom. You don't need permission to obey. You don't need understanding to move. You don't need confirmation to rise. You just need one thing, conviction. And that's what God's been building in you all along? And maybe you didn't realize it while it was happening, but all that loss, all that silence, all that stretching, it wasn't the end of you. It was the beginning. Because the wilderness wasn't meant to punish you. It was meant to prepare you. God wasn't keeping you hidden to hurt you. He was keeping you hidden to form you, to teach you what oil really costs, to teach you the weight of your voice, to make sure that when you finally stepped out, you wouldn't need applause to know you were anointed. And now, that season is shifting. The ground beneath you has changed. The warfare hasn't stopped, but your vision has returned. Your discernment is sharper. Your spirit is anchored. You're not questioning what God said, you're starting to believe it. You're beginning to recognize who you are. And that's what terrifies hell the most. Because now we move from fire to fulfillment, from silence to sending, from hiding to harvest. You're not the same woman who went into that valley. You've been refined. You've been recentered. You've been rebuilt. And what was once a season of breaking has become a season of becoming. You don't need the old anymore. You don't need to go back. Because what's ahead of you is greater than what you lost, and now heaven is calling you to rise. So if you're watching this and every word has been confirming what your spirit already knew, you are the one. You're the woman God called, the one the enemy couldn't destroy, the one who's rising in this hour. Then don't wait another moment. Don't downplay it. Don't second guess it. Say yes, Seth. Speak what He told you. Move where He's leading you. Forgive who you need to. Walk away from what you've outgrown and step into the authority that's been waiting on your agreement. Because this generation needs your obedience. There are lives on the other side of your yes. There's territory that only you can take. And if you're watching this and you're not her, but you know her, then send this to her. Share this with your sister, your friend, your mother, your daughter. Share it with the woman who's been silent too long, the one who's been fighting in the dark with no language for what she's going through. Be the one who reminds her she's not broken. She's chosen. She's not crazy. She's called, and heaven is still backing her. You have no idea what your obedience could unlock in someone else's life. Don't keep this word to yourself. Be the messenger. Be the bridge. Be the voice that reminds another woman who she truly is. Because when one daughter rises, others follow. If this message spoke to you, let us know in the comments and like this video to help spread the word. Your participation doesn't just support the message, it strengthens a movement. A community of chosen souls united in purpose, anchored in truth and shining light in a dark world. This world is full of sorrow, confusion, and noise, but you were born to bring clarity, comfort, and courage. So if this touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a woman who needs to be reminded of who she is. Thank you for watching until the end. Your journey is not an accident, it's sacred. And your light? It's needed now more than ever. If you haven't yet subscribed to Secrets of the Bible, join us for more spirit-led content on identity, purpose, and personal evolution. Until next time, remember, you are a masterpiece in progress, whole yet always growing, complete yet still evolving, tested but never defeated, chosen, and deeply, deeply favored.